There is a light bulb in California that has been on since 1901. 124 years of continuous burning. It hangs from the ceiling of a fire station in Livermore, California. It has outlasted every firefighter who ever worked beneath it. It has outlasted the wiring of the building itself. It has outlasted 3 separate webcams installed to prove it is still burning. When the fire department moved stations in 1976, that bulb received a full fire truck escort. An electrician was waiting at the new building to plug it back in. 22 minutes without power was all it ever needed. That is the only significant interruption in over a century of continuous light. The Guinness Book of World Records has certified it. Ripley's Believe It or Not has featured it on television. The US government has acknowledged it through letters from senators and congresspeople. It is not a myth, and it is not folklore. It is a 4-watt glow hanging 15 feet above a concrete floor, and you can watch it right now on a live webcam. The bulb was made by a man named Adolphe Chalet. His company was bought by General Electric. His factory was shut down. His technology was discontinued. And 10 years after he vanished from the historical record, GE sat in a room in Geneva with every major light bulb manufacturer on the planet. They agreed to make sure nothing like his bulb would ever reach consumers again. Chalet was born in Paris on July 15, 1867. His father was a Swedish watchmaker. His mother was Russian. He trained at both German and French scientific institutions and became an expert in chemistry, mineralogy, and electrical engineering. In 1891, he boarded a ship called the Teutonic and sailed to America. He married Maud Bickmore of Maine. And by 1896, he had landed in a small town in Ohio that was about to become the unlikely center of the lighting world. The town was Shelby. The company was the Shelby Electric Company, formed with $100,000 in capital and about 50 stockholders. Chalet was the technical manager. John Chamberlain Fish was secretary. William W. Skiles, a future United States representative, was president. They built a factory on 3 acres of farmland and started making light bulbs. Within 18 months, the local newspaper was already writing about them. The Shelby News called their weekly company updates electric flashes. By 1897, Chalet's lamp design was being written about in Electrical World magazine. The article described a bulb with a filament manufactured using, and this is a direct quote, a secret chemical process. Chalet did not publish the composition. He did not license the technique. He kept the most important part of his invention completely hidden. By 1899, the United States Treasury Department had placed an order for approximately 40,000 Shelby lamps. By 1902, the factory was producing 10,000 bulbs a day with nearly 900 employees. Most of the assembly workers were women, chosen for their small and steady hands. They carefully blew glass and fitted filaments into bulbs designed from the first day to last. Shelby's advertisements did not emphasize price. They emphasized permanence, the longest life with the greatest economy. That was their selling point. Not cheap, not disposable, built to endure. Now here is the skeptical response, and it is a fair one. The Centennial bulb runs at very low wattage. It was originally 60 watts but has dimmed over the decades to roughly 4. Maybe it just survives because it barely works. Maybe old products seem better because we only remember the ones that lasted, not the thousands that broke. That is survivorship bias, and it is a real phenomenon. I considered that for a long time. But then I found the research. Deborah Katz, a physics professor at the United States Naval Academy, led a study on Shelby bulbs. Her team could not test the Centennial bulb directly because removing it would risk destroying it. So they tested identical Shelby bulbs from the same era. They used lasers to measure the filament. What they found ended the survivorship bias argument. Chalet's filament is 8 times thicker than a modern incandescent filament. 8 times. And it behaves differently at the molecular level. When tungsten filaments heat up, they resist more electricity. When Chalet's carbon filament heats up, it allows more electricity through. The opposite behavior. Student researcher Justin Felgar published these findings in a 2010 paper. Even Mythbusters investigated the bulb and could not fully explain how the filament was made. Whatever Chalet created in that Ohio factory was not just a slightly better version of what everyone else was making, it was fundamentally different, and he made sure the formula never appeared in any document anyone could find. That part troubles me. When Chalet filed his patent on October 22, 1900, he described the shape of the filament and the design of the glass, but he left out the composition of the filament itself. He left out the manufacturing process. The thing that made his bulbs last forever, he kept as a trade secret instead of a patent. Patents expire. Patents get acquired. Trade secrets die with their keeper. It is almost as if he knew someone would try to take it, and the timeline that follows makes it very hard to think he was wrong. General Electric had been quietly consolidating the American lighting industry since the 1890s. In 1901, a group of smaller lamp manufacturers formed the National Electric Lamp Association, known as NELA, to compete against GE. Shelby Electric joined. It seemed like a move toward independence. But there was a problem nobody outside the boardroom knew about. GE had secretly purchased 75% of NELA's stock. The Independent Manufacturers Alliance was, from the beginning, controlled by the company they were trying to compete against. Around 1903, NELA purchased Shelby Electric. Chalet's company now belonged, through a chain of shell ownership, to General Electric. In 1911, a federal court uncovered the arrangement. GE had owned 75% of NELA the entire time. The court ordered NELA dissolved. GE's response was not to release the companies, it was to absorb them directly. Every manufacturer that had joined NELA thinking they were protecting their independence was folded into GE. On approximately March 19, 1912, the Shelby Electric Company ceased to exist. GE opened its massive NELA Park facility in Cleveland and moved everything there. By 1914, not a single lamp was being manufactured at the Shelby factory. By 1919, the building had been converted into a tractor company. The name Shelby Electric disappeared from the industry entirely. And the people who built it? William Skiles, the company president and U.S. representative, died in 1904 at age 54. John Chamberlain Fish, the co-founder who had risen to become president of NELA itself, died in 1999. He was approximately 44 years old. The Shelby Daily Globe ran a 5-column obituary on April 20th, 1909. John Cooper Whiteside, the company superintendent, died in 1926 at 55, and Adolphe Chalet, the man whose name should be in every history of American invention. The records say he worked at a lamp factory in Mexico City from 1904 to 1914. The Mexican Revolution forced him back to the United States, and then he died. Wikipedia says sometime after 1914, he was approximately 47 years old. But the exact date is uncertain. The exact circumstances are uncertain. Some researchers who have traced his story note that he may have simply disappeared. I want to be careful here. I spent 3 weeks with this research before I wrote a single word. People die. People died young in that era. There were revolutions and epidemics and 1,000 ordinary explanations. I am not suggesting anything sinister about any individual death. What I am saying is that the knowledge died. The filament process, the chemical composition, the manufacturing technique that made a bulb capable of burning for over a century. None of it was preserved. None of it was passed down. A Naval Academy physics professor tried to reverse engineer a Shelby bulb in 2010. She could not fully explain how the filament works. The United States Patent Office has the paperwork, and the answer is not in it. Whatever Chalet knew, it is gone. And here is what happened 10 years after he vanished. December 23, 1924. Geneva, Switzerland. Representatives from every major light bulb manufacturer on Earth gathered in a single room. Osram from Germany, Philips from the Netherlands, Tungsram from Hungary, Compagnie des Lampes from France, Associated Electrical Industries from Britain, Tokyo Electric from Japan, and General Electric from the United States, participating through its international subsidiaries. The same General Electric that had absorbed Shelby Electric 12 years earlier. They formed the Phoebus cartel, named after the Greek god of light, registered as a legal Swiss corporation. Their public purpose was standardization and efficiency. Their actual purpose, documented in internal records that surfaced decades later, was to ensure that no light bulb sold anywhere in the world lasted more than 1,000 hours. At the time, the average bulb lasted 2,500 hours. Their job was to cut that number by more than half. They built a testing laboratory in Switzerland. Every member factory was required to send sample bulbs for inspection. If a factory's bulbs lasted longer than 1,005 hours, the factory was fined. Half a Swiss franc for every 100 hours over the limit. Let that settle in. They did not fine companies for making bulbs that broke too quickly. They fined them for making bulbs that lasted too long. Engineers who had spent their entire careers trying to extend bulb life were now ordered to make their products fail faster, and they succeeded. By 1934, the average lifespan of a standard light bulb had dropped from 1,800 hours to just over 1,200. No factory on Earth was producing bulbs that lasted more than 1,500 hours. At its peak, the Phoebus cartel controlled approximately 90% of global light bulb production. The agreement was designed to last until 1955. It collapsed in 1940 only because the Second World War made international coordination impossible. But the 1,000-hour standard survived. Long after the cartel dissolved, every manufacturer on the planet continued building to its specifications. The standard became the norm. When a US court finally found General Electric guilty of violating the Sherman Antitrust Act in the early 1950s, it barely registered in the public consciousness. By then, nobody remembered that light bulbs had ever lasted longer. There is a phrase I keep circling back to in this research. They did not suppress a better product. They made a worse one mandatory. And the light bulb was not the last time this playbook was used. In 1939, DuPont released nylon stockings that were nearly indestructible. Women reportedly used them to tow cars. The demand was so intense that stores experienced what newspapers called nylon riots. Then DuPont realized the problem. If the stockings never break, women never buy more, so they sent their chemists back to the laboratory with one instruction: make them weaker. The next versions ripped easily. A French consumer study by the organization Halter, All Obsolescence Programme, found that 72% of modern tights break within an average of 6 wears. This was not an accident of progress, it was progress deliberately reversed. And here is a detail most people miss. DuPont acquired a controlling stake in General Motors in 1921. The same company that weakened its own stockings also pioneered the strategy of changing car designs every year to make last year's model feel outdated. Same ownership, same philosophy, applied across entirely different industries at the same time. One detail from the Shelby Electric timeline has stayed with me for weeks. When GE absorbed the company, the Shelby sales division was not immediately killed. It was rebranded as the Empire Lamp Division and relocated to Buffalo, New York, the same city Chalet had moved to when he left Shelby in 1901. That sales division operated until April 1, 1925. The Phoebus cartel was formed on December 23, 1924. The last organizational trace of Chalet's company was erased within months of the cartel's creation. The door closed, and the lock was changed in the same motion. Think about what you replace in your own home. Light bulbs, appliances, chargers, cables, phone batteries that barely hold a charge after 2 years, washing machines that your grandmother ran for 30 years replaced by models that struggle past 7. Products that your grandparents' generation bought once and used for decades, you replace every few years. You have been told this is because technology moves fast, because materials are cheaper, because the market gives you more options at lower prices, and some of that is true. But there is another explanation that is also documented, also proven in court, also visible in corporate archives that were unsealed decades after the fact. The products are designed to fail. Not because they have to. Because a product that lasts is a customer lost. The Phoebus cartel was the first time this philosophy was formalized, enforced with fines, and applied across an entire global industry. It worked so well that it became the template. Cars, clothing, electronics. The principle remained the same. Never let a product outlast the consumer's willingness to replace it. The centennial light is still burning. You can verify this yourself. It hangs in Fire Station number 6, 4550 East Avenue, Livermore, California. There is a live webcam. There is a committee that maintains it, a partnership between the fire department, the Livermore Heritage Guild, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, and Sandia National Laboratories. The bulb has its own website. It has been featured on network television, in documentary films, in newspapers across the world. Everyone marvels at the bulb. Almost nobody asks about the man who made it. Adolphe Chalet knew something about carbon and glass and electricity that we cannot replicate today. He protected that knowledge so thoroughly that even his own patent does not contain it. He watched the industry consolidate around him. He watched his company get absorbed. And whatever he carried in his head, it went with him when he disappeared from the record. The bulb does not care about any of that. It does not care about cartels or patents or corporate acquisition strategies. It has been doing the only thing it was ever designed to do for 124 years, glowing, quietly, in a fire station in California. Proof that something better existed, proof that it was taken away, and proof that whoever took it could not kill the evidence entirely. And the question that will not leave me is not how it still works. The question is why it was the last one they ever let anyone make.